It is just before midnight, September 11th, 1971. A man named Robert Rowlands is in his London flat, listening to his amateur radio. And what he is hearing on a frequency where no one is supposed to be talking sounds at first like complete nonsense. A man is asking another man whether the fumes are getting too thick. What Rowlands has just stumbled into by pure radio chance is one of the most brazen bank heists in British history. A few hundred meters away, 4 men are inside a 40-foot tunnel, cutting upward into the vault of Lloyd's Bank, Baker Street. Over the next 48 hours, they will open 268 safety deposit boxes. They will walk away with at least £1.25 million, many millions in today's money. None of them will be caught in the act. Then, just as Britain starts reading about it, the story begins going missing from the front pages. The headlines thin, the follow-ups slow. The story, for a while, almost disappears, and the legend of why it disappeared has grown for 50 years into one of the most persistent cover-up rumors in British memory. The claim, never officially confirmed, is that one of those boxes held compromising photographs of a member of the royal family, and that the British government quietly buried the entire story to make sure those photographs were never published. What follows is what actually happened that weekend, and, just as importantly, where the legend stops matching the evidence. The tunnel started in the basement of a leather goods shop called Le Sac, 2 doors down from the bank on Baker Street. Le Sac had been quietly leased that summer by men who, by all appearances, had no real intention of selling handbags. From the basement they dug down, then across under a chicken restaurant called the Chicken Inn, and then up 40 feet of horizontal tunnel ending at the underside of the Lloyd's Bank vault floor. A vault floor thick enough to require serious cutting equipment, and, in the eventual charges, explosives. On the other side of that floor, 268 private safety deposit boxes. The bank itself was not entitled to know what was in them. That was about to stop being true. By the night of Saturday, September 11th, the tunnel is finished. The 4 men are inside, and as they start cutting into the safety deposit boxes, they begin talking to each other on cheap walkie-talkies, never imagining that anyone could possibly be listening on that frequency at that hour. Roughly a mile and a half away, Robert Rowlands is. He is, in the language of the day, a radio ham, an amateur enthusiast, listening for whatever the airwaves happen to carry. And on this night, the airwaves are carrying a robbery in progress. Rowlands later told the press he overheard a man identified as a lookout called Bob, telling the men in the vault that the cutting fumes were getting dangerous. He picked up his phone, called the local police, and was told to do something extraordinary. Keep listening, and tape it. According to multiple accounts, what followed was one of the strangest police searches in modern British history. With only a rough triangulation on the radio signal, the Metropolitan Police sent officers to roughly 750 banks across central London. One account says they even reached the Lloyd's branch on Baker Street, found the front door locked, and left. By dawn on Sunday, the men were gone. By Monday morning, when bank staff opened the vault for the new week, they walked into the aftermath of what would later be charged as one of the biggest bank robberies in British history. 268 safety deposit boxes had been opened. The contents, cash, jewelry, documents, things nobody at Lloyd's had any idea were in there, were gone. The Metropolitan Police were left with one extremely upset bank, one frustrated radio enthusiast with a tape, and almost no leads. And here is where the story gets strange. Archive citations show that the Times and the Guardian both ran reports on September 14th, on the radio interception, on the police search. There is no mystery about whether the story was, at first, reported. It was. What the legend says happened next is that, after a few days, the British government issued a formal request, a D-notice, asking the press to stop covering the case. And the legend says most of the press complied. For decades, that has been the version of events that almost everyone has heard. Now, to be clear about what we actually know, the D-notice system, today renamed the DSMA notice, is real. It is a voluntary, advisory system through which the British government can ask the press not to publish material it considers a threat to national security. It has no legal force, editors can refuse it, and specific advice can be confidential, so the absence of public confirmation is not the same as proof nothing happened. That matters here, because a D-notice request would, by design, be very hard to disprove from the outside. But it is also hard to prove, and one of Britain's most respected investigative journalists, Duncan Campbell, has gone on the record to flatly contradict the cover-up version. Writing in The Guardian in 2008, Campbell rejected the D-notice version outright. There was, he wrote, no D-notice. And the case did receive press coverage. The wider archive record supports him. Separate press citations show coverage continuing through the arrests in November of 1971 and through the trial at the Old Bailey in 1973. There is a clear thinning of coverage after the first week, but a thinning is not the same as a ban. The story did keep being told. And one more piece of evidence on the cover-up question, by absence. A manual search of the Hansard parliamentary record across the entire 1971 to 1975 window surfaces no debate, no question, no ministerial answer that mentions the Baker Street robbery or a Baker Street D-notice. If Parliament discussed it, it left no public trace. And yet the legend persisted. In fact, it has only grown, propelled more than anything else, by a 2008 feature film called The Bank Job, starring Jason Statham, which dramatized the cover-up theory in full. The film's writers acknowledged at the time of release that significant parts of their plot were fictionalized. The center of that fictionalized plot, and the most persistent piece of the Baker Street legend, is the claim that one of the safety deposit boxes was allegedly connected to the activist Michael X, and allegedly contained compromising photographs of Princess Margaret. The version told in the film is that British intelligence orchestrated, or at least enabled, the robbery to retrieve those photographs. Here is the thing. The earliest documented appearance of that specific claim, Princess Margaret photographs, Michael X's safety deposit box, appears to be in publicity material for that 2008 film. Not in 1971, not in 1972. Not in any contemporaneous British newspaper from the time of the heist. The trail starts in 2007. Robert Rowlands, the radio enthusiast, was still alive when the film came out. He gave an interview to The Observer in February 2008. Rowlands told the paper the film was, in his words, a series of misconceptions that dragged in royalty, and said it had nothing to do with the true events. He had been the man who actually heard the robbery happen. And in his telling, what he had heard was 4 men cutting open boxes, not a national security operation. What we do know is this. Contemporary press accounts report that in January of 1973, 4 men, Anthony Gavin, Thomas Gray Stephen, Reginald Samuel Tucker, and Benjamin Wolfe, stood trial at the Old Bailey for the Baker Street robbery. According to those accounts, 3 pleaded guilty. Wolfe contested the charges and lost. Gavin, Tucker, and Stephen each received 12-year sentences. Wolfe, who was older, received 8. The Metropolitan Police file on the case, held at the National Archives under reference MEPO 26417, confirms the names, the charge, and the figure of £1.25 million. The rest of the loot, the bulk of it, was never officially recovered. The contents of the 268 boxes have never been officially listed. According to the press coverage at the time, some owners never came forward to claim their losses at all. That fed speculation for decades about what some of those boxes may have contained, even if we will never know specifically what. And the cover-up, the D-notice, the suppressed press, the royal photographs remains exactly what it has always been. A persistent, decades-old claim, contradicted by at least one major journalist on the record, supported by no released government document, absent from the Hansard parliamentary record, amplified more than anything else by a single feature film. The building on the corner of Baker Street and Marylebone Road is no longer a bank. The Chicken Inn is gone. Le Sac, the leather goods shop that wasn't really a leather goods shop, is gone. And the question of whether the British government really did try to bury the story of what happened in that vault, or whether the press just lost interest after a few weeks and the legend grew on its own, is as unresolved in the public record as ever. 268 safety deposit boxes, 1 radio enthusiast, 4 men with cutting tools in a tunnel, and a story that, 50 years later, is famous mostly for the parts we still cannot prove.